This is Gemara in Kesubos Daf Chof Hey. We're holding the top of Chof Hey Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top. We're in the middle of a discussion about Gedoyla Chazaka, the incredible Chazaka of Atar Shasa, and the various answers as to why Atar Shasa was not worried, was not concerned that if he allows the Kohanim to eat Truma, that they're going to assume automatically they're going to be brought up as kosher Kohanim, the Male Oisan Liyochsin. So says the Gemara, 3 lines from the top, Viba Yisema, another Teret. Hashtanami b'chuma derabanan achol b'chuma deraisa loyachol. They were not actually eating chuma deraisa. They're only eating chuma derabanan v'chimaskina and chuma liyochsin. And when do we allow for one to be brought up and assumed to be a kosher koyanim based on the fact that he's eating chuma is only b'chuma deraisa b'chuma derabanan loy maskina. From the fact that he eats chuma derabanan, we don't automatically assume that he is a kosher kohanim. But ask the Gemara, such a good teretz, but it blows up the whole kasha. The whole pasuk makes no sense. What's this incredible chazaka that the pasuk spoke about? Explains the Gemara, maybe you should make a gezerah. Maybe you should be concerned that if someone eats truma derabanan, maybe they would think that he ate truma deraisa and they'd bring him up to yochsin. So, like guys, reading on the pasuk is teaching us that we do not make such a decree. And the reason of this concern, Rashi here speaks out, Dikal Migzar. Rashi is about 8 lines into the narrow lines. Shari La'eretz Ba'u. The whole pasuk was discussing when they come to Eretz Yisrael. Umetsuya Sham Chuma Gemura de Araisa. And they're now going to finally have potential Chuma de Araisa, Mashli Matulem Begoyle, which they never had. And therefore, perhaps there's a concern that they're going to come to let them eat there. And that is what the pasuk is coming to teach us. Says the Gemara, 1 second. This whole taret, this whole answer that we began discussing today is predicated on the fact that they eat chuma derabanan and not deraisa. Ask the Gemara why? Why would they not eat chuma deraisa? The pasuk says the pasuk says that Atashasa told them they're not allowed to eat kodesh kodashim. What's the obvious implication? They can't eat kachim, they can't eat karbanos. But a chuma daraisa achol, but they could eat chuma daraisa. So how do you see in the pasuk that they were not eating chuma daraisa? Explains the Gemara. Hachik Amar, about 12 lines down. First one line is Hachik Amar. Loi b'midi dikri kaddish. The pasuk is referring to they're not allowed to eat something which is called kaddish. Dechsev, as the pasuk says, Chol Zahar lo yoichal kodesh, and no non-kain is allowed to eat something with kedusha, and nor are they allowed to eat something which is called kachim, referring to karbanos. She's not allowed to eat. And we explain this pasuk that the pasuk is referring to that which they separated from the karbanos, and therefore that is a proof that we're seeing that it's not necessarily coming to teach us about truma. It's coming to teach us about explaining the Gemara. It's coming to teach us about midi dikri kodesh, referring to truma, midi dikri kachim, referring to karbanos. Neither of them they eat. Not, again, let's explain. Not that they didn't eat kachim, but anything less they ate, which was the kasha, which implies they didn't eat karbanos, but they could eat truma. Says where no, they didn't eat kachim, and they didn't eat kachi or kachim. They didn't eat truma, nor did they eat karbanos. Explains the Gemara. Now we're going to bring a raya. Again, the whole discussion from yesterday to today is centering around when do we assume that one is a kayin, one is miyuchas, one is allowed to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So now we're going to try to bring a proof that someone who dochin, someone who does berachas kayanim, is assumed to be a kosher kayin. Tashema, says the Gemara, chazaka likohuna. What is a chazaka for kuna nisiyas kabayim bebavel? It's dochening in Bavel, and achilas chala b'Surya, eating of chala in Surya, v'chilas matanos b'krachim, and eating of the different gifts, the meisters, etc., in the cities in Yerushalayim. So what do we see in this brayso? Explains the Gemara. Katani miyos nisiyas kabayim. My love, liyuchsin, that what's the brayso referring to? That what does Nisiyas Kabayim prove to you about the Kayin? It proves to you for Yochsin that he's a kosher Kayin. with regard to his genealogy, explains the Gemara, Truma just refers to the fact that he can eat Truma. Says the Gemara, 1 second, what were the 3 cases in the Braisa? Tochnin eating Truma, and then Chilik Matanais. Says the Gemara, ask the Gemara about 15 lines down, the first one line is Vaha, Vadom Yadachilas Chala Katani. It says it's similar to eating of Chala. Ma Chilas Chala Yochsin, that what is eating Chala? Eating Chala proves you're kosher kohen, that you're miyuchas, that you're genealogically fit. Explains the Gemara, it's not a problem. Achilas chala gufa litruma. The premise of what you said is wrong. Achilas chala is not making you into a miyuchas, rather it only allows you to eat truma. And the Gemara explains, Kesavar chala b'zman hazeh dirabanan, which by the way is of course what we paskin nowadays. Chala is a din dirabanan, u'truma deraisa. U'maskinan mechala dirabanan litruma deraisa. And the Tana, what is the chiddush? The chiddush is if you eat chala, you eat something derabanan, we bump you up. We allow you even to eat truma deraisa. Uchda'abech lo Ravuna Breit Rav Yeshua Rabbanan, and like Ravuna Breit Rav Yeshua reversed, that learned the opposite to the Rabbanan, as we're about to see. So what we're proving right now is this Braisa has nothing to do with Yochsin. The Braisa is just teaching us that if someone dochins, if someone eats chala, he's elevated. We do assume at some level he's a kosher kayin. With what level? That we allow him to eat truma. Are we going to go so far as assume that he's a miyuchas? For that we will not. Says the Gemara, Toshima, trying to prove that Berachas Kohanim Duchening is going to allow you to be considered miyuchas. Chazak likuna nesiyas kabayim. Says the Raisa, what's a chazaka for kuna? It's nisiyas kabayim v'chiluk graniyos if someone dochins or if someone receives the different kohanic gifts be'eretz Yisrael. Ubesuria, what's the din in Syria? Ubechol makom sheshluchei rosh chodesh magim, or any place that the bezdin when they're makadesh the new moon they reach nisiyas kabayim. Any of these places the raya would be nisiyas kabayim. Raya avaloich granis. In those places, Siyas Kapayim would work, but not getting the different gifts. Ubavel Kesuria, Bavel's like Surya. And the Brisa concludes, Rashba Goimer says Rav Shimon Gamliel, Af Alexandria shall Mitzrayim. Even a place called Alexandria Mitzrayim shall Af Alexandria shall Mitzrayim Barishaina. Also Alexandria of Mitzrayim Bari. One more time, let's read that again. Alexandria shall Mitzrayim Barishaina. Originally, Alexandria of Mitzrayim was Mimnei Bezdin Kavu in Sham, because they had a set Bezdin over there. So originally, it had the same din. So after this whole long brisa, 5 lines, what does the Gemara prove? Katani Mios, what do we see? Nisiyas Kabayim. We see that Nisiyas Kabayim Duchning is at some level a raya. He's a koyin. My lav Yochsin is not a raya that he is a koyin with regard to the fact that we assume he's miyuchas, he can marry into the kahuna, we assume that he's kosher. Says the Gemara, loy again, lechala. It allows it to be considered a kayin with regard to eating of chala. And the Gemara says, Adomia dechilik garanias katani. And what's the raya? The Brisa equated this kayin who dochins with a kayin that collects the gifts, the chilik garanias, when they distribute it at the granary. Ma chilik garanias the yochsin, avsis gabayim the yochsin. Says the Gemara, 1 second, it should be equal. The Brisa should be parallel. And just like one of them is for Yochsin, this should be as well. As the Gemara, no, again, just like we saw before, the exact same setup of the Gemara. Loy Chiligranius Gufa Lechala. Chiligranius is only a din which allows the Kayin to eat challah. And we explain Kesavar Chumazan Zed Rabbanan Mamish carbon copy what we said a moment ago. V'chala de'araisa. Maskinim b'chuma de'Rabbanan lechala de'araisa. I say it's a carbon copy in the setup. Obviously, it's the exact flip of the previous brisa. Previous brisa said chala de'Rabbanan, and from chala de'Rabbanan we allow you to eat truma. Here we're saying from truma de'Rabbanan we allow you to eat chala de'araisa. Again, the din is different, but it's the same binyan, the same setup that we're proving that there's not a proof that the fact that he is a miyuchas. Says the Gemara, now we're going to go a bit deeper. Is Truma derabanan, is Chala de'araisa? What exactly is the score? So says the Gemara, about 20 lines to the bottom. The first one line is de'araisa. Ukidashkachinu Ravuna Breit Rav Yeshua Rabbanan, and like Rav Yehuna Breit Rav Yeshua found, and he discussed with the Rabbanan, Dam Ravuna Breit Rav Yeshua, Ashkachintu the Rabbanan. I found the Rabbanan Bebei Rav in the Shiva of Rav, the Yasvi, the Kamri, they were sitting and saying, Afilu Luman Dam Chupazan Zed Rabbanan. Even if you hold that nowadays Truma is only rabbinic, But chala daraisa. How do I know this? He explained, Sharei Zayin Shekivshu. The reason that we know this goes from the times of Yeshua. For the 7 years that they conquered Eretz Yisrael, V'zayin Shechelku, and the 7 years that they gave out, they apportioned, they divided up Eretz Yisrael. Nischayvu bechala. They had to give, and they were required to separate chala v'lo b'tshuma. So what do we see? We see that chala is on a higher level. V'aminu lehu, and Ravuna explained to them, v'aminu lehu fakir, the exact opposite. Afilu l'mandam b'tshuma zeh b'deraisa. I can say, mamish, your proof says Ravuna. Flip it around. Even if you hold Shumas Deraisa, but Chal Zerabanan, how do I know? Titania, it says in a Braisa, B'voyachem, El Haaretz, when you come to the land, if it just said, from the fact was B'voyachem, when you come to the land, Yochel, I would have thought Mishek Nichnisula, Shnaimu Shloisha, Miraglim. I would have thought that already 1, 2, or 3 of the Miraglim came in, automatically you have a Chiyav Chala, B'voyachem, you started, Klai Yisrael at some level entered, the Miraglim, the spies entered in, that should be enough. Tamalever B'voyachem, says the Torah, when B'voyachem, when Klal Yisrael enters. From there, what do we learn? Bevias kulchem amarti veloy bevias mixasim. It's only when all of Klal Yisrael enters. So what do we see? That in order for challah to be a daraisa, it's not when there's a minority, it's when there's a majority, when all of Klal Yisrael enters. Which, by the way, parenthetically, is the reason that some want to say, perhaps nowadays challah would at some level have a din of a more of a daraisa, because maybe it is already a majority in Eretz Yisrael, but the conventional opinion is Chala is derabanan. And now we conclude our ayah of Chiyaskinu Ezra. And when Ezra came up, and Ezra came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, as we turn over to Chavei Mebeis, Lav Kulu Salik. Not all of them went up to Eretz Yisrael, and since not all of them went up to Eretz Yisrael, if you look at the Tab Rashi explains the majority stayed in Bavel, and therefore the obligation of Truma stays to be a derabanan, and that's the Gemara's raya, that even if Truma is a deraisa, Chala is a derabanan. Because why? Because Chala is dependent on different, we can't equate everything. Not every apple is like every orange. Truma is a deraisa. What does Chala have to do with? Chala has to do with the amount of people of Klal Yisrael being there, and from when Ezra came up, it was not a roiv, and therefore it would not be a din dea raisa. And this again in Shulchan Aruch Shin Chaf Beis, in Yeridea, is where these halachas are found, in which we paskin it's a derabanan. Tashima, says the Gemara, chazaka likahuna. What is the chazaka for kuna? Nisiyas kapayim. Again, we could call today proving duchening is miyuchas. Is I think proof Bryson number 3. Says the Gemara Chavei Mebeis in the top line. Tashema chazaka likuna nisiyas kapayim. What is the chazaka for kuna? Why do we prove that someone is miyuchas? Is nisiyas kapayim if he duchens? Or similarly, if he receives food, the distribution at the granary, veidos, or if we give a testimony about his parents, someone recognizes his father or his mother. Eidos chazaki. Says the Gemara, how can you tell me Eidos is only a chazaka? Eidos is absolute proof. As the Rashi 3 lines on the top points out, Eidos chazaka karila. Eidos, we kill with Eidos. Eidos is the real deal. You tell me it's only a chazaka. It's only a presumption. Eidos shows ironclad. Elalav Achi Kamer explains the Gemara. Nisiyas kapayim ki eidos. Duchning is the same level, the same status as testimony. Ma'eidos leyochsen. Af nisiyas kapayim leyochsen. And therefore the Gemara is a proof that why does the Bryce equate nisiyas kapayim duchning with eidos to show us that it's fit to prove he is genealogically fit, that he is miyuchas. Answers Gemara 5 lines down. Lo, it's no proof. Eidos abba mikoya chazaka kechazaka. You know what the Brisa means? That Eidos came from the koyach of a chazaka. That the testimony came from the fact that they're testifying that their parents were kayanim, which itself is some level of a chazaka, has the din of a chazaka itself, and that is the reason why the Brisa labels Eidos as a chazaka, but does not necessarily give you a proof that it's referring to yochsin. And from here says the Gemara, ki ahu da'asli kamid Ravami, a raya that someone came in front of Ravami, Amar le muchzakni. And he said to him about a third person, we know that this guy is a kain. Amar le Ravami says, Maraya, how do you know? How do you know he's a kohen? Amar lei shekara risha basic Knesset. He got kohen in shul. That's how I know. V'chezka shu kohen. So Rav Ami responded. So what does that show you? That just shows you that either. Excuse me. Rav Ami said, this is a kasha. B'chezka shu kohen, oy b'chezka shu gadol. What's the reason he got kohen? Did he get kohen because kohen gets the first aliyah? Or as we've learned back in the previous Gemaras of Megillah and Tainis, or does he get kohen for the mere fact that he was the gadol? As we know that the gadol adar, the greatest person in shul, gets kohen. So he responded, no. Shekara achrav Levi. The next person got Levi, and therefore we know that the reason he got the first aliyah was he was a kohen. Vehelu Rav Ami likuna alpiv, and based upon this, Rav Ami said he is a kohen. So this is the Gemara's proof that we're using surrounding details. We're using some level of chazaka to prove that he is a kohen. But with what regard are we proving that he's a kohen? Not with regard to yochsin, but with regard to other halachas similar to like eating truma. Hahu das lekamei Rav Ashi, 10 lines down, another story. Someone came to Rav Ashi ben Levi, Amar lei, mochzakni bazeshu Levi, I know this person is a Levi. Amar lei, my rois. Rav Shu ben Levi says, how do you know? Amar lei, shekar sheni basic Knesset, because he got the second aliyah. And he asked the same question, b'chezkas shu Levi, oy b'chezkas shu gadol, shekar oy b'chezkas shu gadol. Why did he get Levi? Did he get Levi because he is a Levi? Or did he get Levi because he is a gadol? He is a great person, meaning perhaps there were no Leviim that were there, explains Rashi, and therefore the greatest Yisrael gets the second aliyah. So maybe he's really Yisrael. Explains the Gemara, Shekar Lafan of Kayin. The reason is there was a Kayin that got in front of him, and therefore, by simple process of elimination, if a Kayin gets number one, who's number two? It has to be a Levi, it can't be Yisrael. And based on these details, V'alur Reshuv and Levi Levia, Al Pev, again, allowing the Chazak, allowing the surrounding details to assume he is a Levi. And story number 3, Ahudas L'Kamei Reish Lakish. Someone comes in front of Reish Lakish. Amalei Machzakni Bezeshu Kayin. I know this person's a Kayin. Amalei my rice. How do you know? Amalei Shkar Reach Basic Knesses. Amalei Reisev Shechili gets Granias. Okay, so you see that he got the first aliyah in shul. Did you also see that he got Truma in the base of Granis in the granary? Amar Loi. Rav Elazar, based upon this, Rav Elazar said, what are you talking about? You asked him, you saw that he got koyin, but now you have to make sure he got grain in the granary. What if there is no granary? We're going to get rid of the din of kahuna. The story continues. Sometimes Reish Lakish and Rav Elazar were sitting before Rav Yochanan. Asa ki amaisa, and a similar story came in front of Rav Yochanan. They come in front of Rav Yochanan. Amrli Reish Lakish, said Reish Lakish to the person coming in to testify that the other guy is a kohen. Research Shechila gets a goya in the same kasha. Did you see him get truma in the granary? Amar lei Rav Yochanan. V'meinchav garin balakunas. Rav Yochanan mimics the words of Rav Elazar. Are you going to tell me that if there's no granary, there's no din of kahuna? Hadar chazil Rav Elazar bishas. So what happened? Rish Lakish turned and looked at Rav Elazar. He was upset with Rav Elazar. Why? Amar shamati mili davar nafcha. You heard these words of Devar Navcha referred to Rabbi Yochanan v'lo Amr lan Mishmei, and you didn't say it in his name. Meaning, the same story happened twice, one with the Talmud Rav Elazar, one with the Rebbe Rabbi Yochanan. So Reish Lakish says to the Talmud Rav Elazar, looking at him, why didn't you say over? When you asked me the question, and you said, what do we do if there's no granaries? Why didn't you say it over in the name of the Rebbe? Why didn't you say it over in the name of Rabbi Yochanan? But again, the Gemara is proving the same detail, that the surrounding details, the fact that he knew that he got koyin is enough, and we do not have to actually know that he got the granios, the grain in the granary. Rebbe Rav Chia says the story. Rebbe and Rav Chia chad hala ben Alpi aviv likuna. One of them said that a child is a din of kuna based on his father's words. And one said that a brother is a din of a Levi based on the words of his brother. So says the Gemara again, this is Rebbe and Rav Chia. So tistayim the Rebbe hel ben alpi aviv likuna. Let's bring a raya that Rebbe was the one that elevated the child to kuna, and by default that means that Rav Chia was the story with the Levi. How do I know? The Tanya, 2 lines from the wide lines. Hari Shabbat Amar if someone comes into bed, says this kid is mine and he's a kohen, he's believed to feed him in truma. But he's not naman to marry him off to someone that is miyuches. Again, the same detail that we keep on saying, there's a higher level. One level is letting me truma, one level is letting the kid eat challah, one level is nisiyas kabayim, one level is getting the first aliyah. But to go and lasiya isha, to marry a woman with untainted lineage, to assume he's a kain 100% miyuches, that is different rules. Different Rabbi, that is Rabbi. Amar Rav Chia, says Rav Chia to Rabbi, Matam Aminu la'achilu b'tshuma, timenu lasiya isha. On the second white line, I don't understand. If you're allowing him to eat truma, why are you not allowing him to get married based on that word? So Rabbi didn't understand. Rabbi asked Rav Chia, I don't get it. The detail we've been discussing the whole day, I don't get it. How are you splitting this hair? How are you saying you can eat truma, but you can't marry, and based that he is a kohen? Amar leis Rav Chia responds, you know why I believe him to allow him to eat truma? The reason is the reason is because it's in his power to give him truma. And I don't believe him to, based on his words, allow him to get married because it's not in his power. And therefore that's why he cannot marry a woman based on the words. But what do we see? We see from the words of Rebbe, the Rebbe is allowing a kid to be established as a kohen with the words of his father. So based on the previous story, Rebbe and Rav Chia, 5 lines from the wide lines. So once we know that was a story with Rebbe, Rav Chia was a story with the Levi. Says the Gemara, Testayim, it is indeed a good proof that must be the Shita of Rebbe. And now the Gemara says, Rebbe, 2 lines from the bottom, Rav Chia must be Rav Chia was the other story. But says the Gemara, ask the Gemara, Rav Chia, Ma'ishra ben Deloi. Why do we not believe the father based on the kid with regard to kahuna? You know why? Because you're related to your father. One can't give eidos about Tony he's related to. But ask the Gemara, Rav Chia, it's the same thing. So why does Rav Chia believe the brother about Leviah, but not the father with regard to kahuna? And we'll turn over to tomorrow's daf for a moment. Chavavim and Aleph says the Gemara, B'meisiach lefi tumo. The reason Rav Chia allows and believes the brother is not in every case. Because you're right. A brother to a brother is like a father to a son. It's relation. You don't have a believability. Why here are you believed? Mesiach lefi tuma. When someone just talks casually, we know it's such a concept many places. If someone just happened to make a remark and he wasn't doing it under oath, he wasn't doing it in a bezdin, and that is the case that Rav Chia allowed one to be believed based on the fact that his brother is a Levi. Tomorrow we'll give examples of such an example of Mesiach lefi tumai. Tomorrow's daf.